Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the San Francisco Cannabis Oversight Committee hearing for Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. This is the first hearing of the new session of the Cannabis Oversight Committee, and so we wish a particularly warm welcome to all of our new and returning members. My name is Scott Dennis, and I will be the secretary for the COC meetings. I am also a current analyst in the Office of Cannabis, where I started a little over a year ago. There will be time for everyone to introduce themselves today, so I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. To enable public participation, we will receive public comment from each on today's agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes, unless otherwise abbreviated by the chair. And when you have 30 seconds remaining, I will indicate that your time is almost up by saying 30 seconds. When your allotted time is reached, I will announce and ask the person in the queue to speak. We will take public comment from those joining us in person first, and then open up to the remote access lines for those joining remotely. For those calling in to submit their testimony, please call 1-415-655-0001 and then enter the access code 2492763-5172. Please wait for the item you are interested in speaking to for public comment to be announced. To comment, you must enter *3 to raise your hand. And once you've raised your hand, you will hear Yes, so to comment, you must enter *3 to raise your hand, and once you've raised your hand, you will hear a prompt that you've raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait until I call on you to speak. When you hear that you are unmuted, that is your indication to begin speaking. Best practices are to call from a quiet location and to please mute the volume on your computer. For those persons attending in person, please line up in front of the table that I'm seated at when I call for public comment on the item that you would like to speak to. Please speak clearly and slowly, and if you care, you can state your name for the record at the beginning of your comment. Finally, I would ask that everyone silence their mobile devices so they do not go off during the proceedings. Please note that committee members are not permitted to speak directly to comments. So with that, we will call item number 1, which is roll call. Sarah, would you mind taking roll call, please?
Certainly. We'll start first with non-voting members. Seat 1, the Department of Public Health. Present.
Present.
Seat 2, the Police Department. Not present. Seat 3, the Department of Building Inspection.
Present.
Seat 4, the Planning Department.
Michael Christensen on behalf of Long Beach County.
Seat 5, the San Francisco Unified School District. Not present. Seat 6, the Entertainment Commission.
Dylan Rice, present.
Seat 7, Fire Department. Not present. And we'll now proceed with the voting members. Seat 8, Ali Jamalian.
Present.
Seat 9, Adam Hayes.
Present.
Seat 10 is vacant. Seat 11, Apollo Wallace.
Present.
Seat 12, Jakari Donaldson.
Present.
Seat 13, David Nogales-Cali.
Present.
Seat 14, Shay Gilmore.
Present.
Seat 15 is vacant. Seat 16, Antoinette Mobley.
Present.
And just to correct for the record, Victor Wong from the fire department is observing remotely, but not in attendance in person.
Thank you. Noted.
Thank you, Sarah.
And with, we have 7 of the 9 voting members present. We have established quorum.
Thank you, Sarah. Agenda item number 1 is now closed. Moving on to agenda item number 2. The San Francisco Cannabis Oversight Committee recognizes that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Moving on to agenda item number 3. At this time, members of the public may address the committee on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee, except agenda items. With respect to agenda items, your opportunity to address the community will be afforded when the item is reached in the meeting. Each member of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes. When the number of speakers exceeds the 10-minute limit, general public comment will be moved to the end of the agenda. For any members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of my table to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have 2 options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code, 2492-763-5172. Then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit your comments by chat. I will open the chat box in a moment, and I will read your comments as they come in. It looks like your gentleman here would like to make public comments, so I'll go ahead and hand the podium over to you.
Thank you. My name is Bram Goodwin. I'm a cannabis activist. I'm the media director of the Bloody Mary Democratic Club of San Francisco. And I just wanted to thank the members of the committee for serving, because I know it's not easy and takes time away, and I appreciate your service. My comment really is, I would love to see the committee in this year to concentrate a little of its efforts on consumers and medical patients. Without them, there is no business, legal business. And in the last meeting, Sarah Payne, who was the medical committee member, put forth proposals to help streamline the MMIC, which is a card which I'm a medical patient of. And in our opinion, there hasn't been enough outreach to people so that they know about the program. It's very limited in terms of access. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 to 4 are the only times, and you have to come in person, which most working people are not able to do. We'd like to see some kind of an online program like DMV has. So I'd love to see the committee look into this. The other item I'd like to raise eventually is, given the economic situation here in San Francisco, many empty buildings, people asking for events and things to fill up and bring people to downtown especially. I'd like to see cannabis be part of the revitalization, and like to see the city government and public health loosen some of the rules to allow cannabis to take some of that space and be productive. I'd like to remind everybody that cannabis and its retail footprint and everything else about the only growth industries that we have in the last couple of years. And I'd like to see it even accelerated. We all know there's a very difficult time in the business, and I think creating more customers, that's what we need. We need to be out in the public. I'd love to see town halls that explain to the public what cannabis is about and all the products that it does. And I think as part of the recommendation that Sarah put down was that there be money allocated for these kind of outreach efforts to increase our base and to increase our medical base. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Appreciate your service, and I'll be interested in hearing the different agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, I have not seen any questions in the chat. No hands raised. So with that, general public comment is now closed. Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to agenda item number 4, reviewing and considering the regular agenda for today's meeting. The members have already reviewed the agenda in advance, so I'll open the floor up to the members. Would anyone like to add to or amend the agenda for today's meeting?
Motion to accept as is.
Second.
There's a motion to accept as is, seconded. I see no objections. We'll now move to public comment. For any members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of my table to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have 2 options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 2492-763-5172, then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you may submit your comments by chat. I will open the chat box momentarily and I will read your comments as they come in. Seeing no hands raised and no questions in the chat, agenda item number 4 is closed. Moving on to agenda number 5, the commencement of the Oversight Committee. Oh, excuse me. I apologize. Yes, we need to hold a vote on accepting the agenda as is. All members in favor, please raise your hand. That is a unanimous vote. And with that, agenda item 4 is closed. We will now move on to agenda item number 5, the commencement of the Oversight Committee. I will now invite Director Nikesh Patel of the Office of Cannabis up to say a few words and then to conduct the swearing in of the new committee members. Director Patel.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see all of you here. I want to echo what Graham said earlier, just thanking the committee members here for being here. This is actually the first committee meeting in about 2 years that's in person. So we are very excited to have everyone here. We're also excited that there is a virtual option for anyone who's unable to attend. Please spread the word. We want these meetings to be well attended. The more voices that are here, the better, and ultimately inform the better conversations. So before I take the swearing in, or before I administer the swearing in, I just want to provide a little bit of context about the work you're stepping into. You represent the 3rd session of the Cannabis Oversight Committee. Given a lot of the conversations I've had with past members, it's not always apparent what the reach and effect of this committee is. But I want to affirm that the reach and effect of this committee is both direct and indirect. And what I want to do is walk through some of the recommendations that this committee has made in the past and the actual outcomes that have come from those recommendations. Just so you understand whether or not the work has been done, some of the stuff that's still ongoing, and then where we go from here. So with that, one of the recommendations early on was creating more access to capital funding for equity applicants. That was one of the earliest recommendations. From that, the equity grants program administered by the Office of Cannabis was born. That program to date has dispersed about $11 million directly to equity recipients. That's significant, and that was really born from this conversation, as well as listening sessions with the equity community. Another early recommendation was supporting the Office of Cannabis for permit review and enforcement. As many of you who have been associated with this project, this experiment of sorts know, the Office of Cannabis was understaffed to begin with. There were a lot of applications that were admitted or submitted, and as a result, there were delays. I'm happy to inform all of you that the Office of Cannabis has staffed up. We are nearing nearly 11 members, 3 of whom are dedicated permit analysts. Scott here has been leading the charge along with 2 other permit analysts who I hope that will be met or will meet in the near future. And we've also staffed 2 additional positions for enforcement and compliance, meaning our ability to conduct compliance inspections and enforcement investigations has ramped up. We'll be happy to share some of the enforcement efforts that we participated in. They have led to significant undercover operations, and we'll share more about that in the weeks to come. Another recommendation was creating an S-type of licensing. And I'm happy to report that that has been created through legislation, and it's an initiative that our office will continue to promote. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm happy to share a little bit more about it after the meeting, you're going to be ready with it. But that was a recommendation that directly translated into the legislative framework. Another recommendation was eliminating and reducing fees associated with the application process. As many of you know, if you're an equity applicant, your fee for the first year is waived. What we've also accommodated is if you're seeking a permit amendment within that first year of being operational, that fee is also. That matters, especially for those operations that have been contemplating changes as soon as they're being approved. So if it happens within that first year, there isn't a fee associated with it. After that first year, there is a fee, but we try and work as efficiently to keep the hours from adding on to it. Another recommendation was reducing the applicant queue. As many of you who have worked in our office know, it took us a while to issue the first permit, but since then, every year I have to report that it has increased exponentially. Just to put it in context, at the end of 2019, we issued our first 2 permits. Today, we are at 45, and the bulk of that growth has happened in the last year and a half. So if you look at where we were at the end of 2021 to where we are now, the number of permits has doubled. We were about 20, we're at 45. And every indication suggests that that number will continue. Another interesting development that happened that this committee was very much part of was there was a piece of legislation introduced to prohibit smoking in residential units. That had an impact on anyone who was consuming cannabis within their residential units. There was a letter that was organized by this committee and was circulated across the supervisors, and as a result, there was an exception that was carved out to that general prohibition on smoking in residential units. Another major topic of this committee was tax policies. As many of you know, the local tax in San Francisco has been suspended. In part, that was the effort of this committee as well as activists in the regions. Equity preservation, and I can keep going, so I'm gonna speed this up a little bit, but equity preservation, that's a change that's made its way into the legislation, and I'm happy to share with you more about it. That was an idea that was born from this committee in the early days before it was called through legislation. Increased daily sale limits for events, that amount has been increased as a result of the recommendation of this committee. Creation of a robust compassion program, we've heard that that's an ongoing effort and it will remain ongoing, but now I'm just sort of moving to some of the efforts that have been discussed and are continuing. Retailers are required to hold a minimum of 10% shelf space for verified equity products. That's a recommendation made by this committee. It's still in the process, and it's something that maybe this committee would like to revisit or modify or provide additional guidance on. Development and implementation of free apprenticeship program through the WD, streamline event permitting, that's something we just heard a moment ago. And then to better understand the predatory practices, taking advantage of social equity program and social equity. That is one that we're continuing to work with us. And we hope that this committee can help inform even more with different on the ground experience. So I can continue, but really the point of this was to help frame the good work of this committee. It's not always apparent, but these conversations that happen here, they do make their way into the conversations with the supervisors, the policies that we set internally. And I just want to make sure that you're all aware that the impact is real. It's just not always apparent in this case. All right, so with that, I'm sure you're all set. So we'll go straight to the vote.
Just as a note, everyone should have a copy of the oath and the sack papers in front of you,
All right, so
not the non-voting members.
the way that we'll proceed here is for the voting members who will be taking this over for the first time, I will read 2 lines at a time and then ask you to repeat those lines back. So feel free to add your name in. I won't say it again. I, blank, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter, and during such time as I hold the office of the Cannabis Oversight Committee.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter, and during such time as I hold the office of Cannabis Oversight Committee.
So with that being out of the way, I'll just reiterate one more time, I'm really looking forward to working with all of you. I will introduce myself again after this meeting ends, it's a round of conversation. But really, thank you for being here, thank you for volunteering. I know many of you are busy and facing some significant economic headwinds right now, where your time would be better served maybe in your jobs or helping support the industry in other ways, so we really appreciate it. And just want to say thank you and welcome.
Yes, congratulations again, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will now move into public comment. For members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of this table if you would like to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have two options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 2492-763-5172, then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit your comments by chat. The chat box is currently open, and I will read your comments as they come in. I do not currently see any hands raised. And I do not see any comments in the chat. With that, agenda item number 5 is now closed, and we'll move on to agenda item number 6. We'll now move into member introductions. Each member of the committee will be provided 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, their professional history, and what brought them to the Cannabis Oversight Committee. These introductions will include all non-voting and voting members. So why don't we start right here at the center of the table with you, Antoinette, if you'd like. Just 2 to 3 minutes about what brought you here and what interests you in the cannabis work. And then we'll move straight down the table, moving to Shay and moving down the rest of the table and around the bend towards our partners from the estimating departments. Yes, you do it right in your seat.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I do apologize for being slightly late today. It's kind of hard to find this place, so here I am. I first and foremost want to thank all of you for being here, because this is much needed work. I'm a cannabis user, advocate, and really want to help to support the continuation of just the use of cannabis and its benefits. I started in this kind of this advocacy role back when we fought for in the legislature to get push for 215 to start the actual cannabis California ID program. And at that time, I was working for Alameda County's Office of AIDS Administration as a quality assurance consultant, and they nominated me to join. They do like they always do. And so I had a chance to work with several of the stakeholders, provide care for them, support them to their medical appointments, and just really fight to get that whole medical program legislature passed in 2015. So here we are today. I'm fast forwarding. I worked also with the hate-free clinics, and I really wish at that time that Prop 215 was really alive and kicking in, because I saw a lot of folks come through there ill and who could have benefited from cannabis use or to become a medical patient versus having to be under the care of Western medicine. Because Western medicine my experience, has damaged many lives for chronic use. So most of the folks that I know who are chronic cannabis users aren't impacted in any negative way from the use of cannabis. They only benefit from it. Even my 92-year-old mom, who's still living, she's alive and kicking, but, she has arthritis. We keep her with CBD rub, and she loves it, and it works. And she doesn't have to take any pain medicines and ibuprofens, things that damage your liver and kidneys and all that sort of stuff. So in a nutshell, that's what really brought me here. I know the health benefits. I took care, like I said, of many patients who were passed on now in the early stages of HIV and AIDS. And, providing housing for them, just knowing, getting to know them intimately. I use cannabis myself so I can have an appetite, the little petite woman, right? I'm 66 years old now. So I want to stay healthy. I want to be able to eat. I want it to be consistent. And that's what cannabis helps me with. So yeah, I think I'm gonna close right there. So thank you guys. I'm very open. I like to listen. I like to really be a part of, working in silos. We can't do that kind of stuff anymore. We have to just be teammates and appreciate everybody's input. I truly, truly do. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all who are not here, but are here virtually. Thanks.
I'm Shay Gilmore. I'm on seat 14, and I just want to echo everything Antoinette just said about the gratitude I have for each and every one of the members here. Thank you for all the work you've done up until this point, all the work I know we're going to do together. I have my own law practice here in San Francisco, and I work exclusively with cannabis operators and investors in corporate, commercial, and regulatory matters, all throughout the supply chain. One of the things I'm really interested in right now has to do with AB 2188 that Governor Newsom signed into law last session, and it goes into effect January 1, 2024. This amends the Fair Employment and Housing Act to provide a prohibition on discrimination against workers for off-duty, off-site cannabis use. Well, I don't think we've had enough conversation and enough really support out there for the employers to kind of be able to adopt and revise their policies and procedures to make room for this new law that's going into effect. And I hope that this committee is going to be interested in supporting our San Francisco employers in the cannabis industry to follow the law and make sure that we protect the rights of workers that have been passed into law and signed by the governor. And that's just kind of one thing that's on my brain right now, but I'm interested in all aspects of law and policy around cannabis and want to really work collaboratively to expand access. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you. I'm looking forward to meeting the rest of you as well. Let's see, I've been in cannabis for the better part of 20 years or so in the cultivation space, the dispensaries, most recently in sales. But definitely look at the committee in terms of looking at regulations and making sure that everything coming down is actually serving the stakeholders is massive and definitely a huge effect on the city. So I'm looking forward to working with you all and yeah, we're connecting.
Thank you, David.
Good afternoon. My name is Jakari Donaldson. I am the CEO and equity owner of the California Street Cannabis Company. I'm a San Francisco native, product of the SFUSD, San Francisco Unified School District. I want to say for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been a small business owner here in San Francisco. With a background in the hospitality and customer service industry through bars and restaurants. More recently, over the last 3 years, I've been in the cannabis space, owning and operating my own dispensaries. Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that I just want to work with a body or a group of people who are interested in really tackling the issues that small business owners here and equity owners here are facing. And would like the opportunity to kind of learn and grow and, you know, have a say in what the future looks like for people who are from San Francisco that look like me.
Apollo Wallace, I'm from the Teamsters Local 2785. I've been a member with them for almost 26 years. I did 24 years as a UPS driver. The last year and a half or so has been as an organizer and a business agent. My experience in cannabis is organizing. I organized workers at a cannabis delivery company from beginning to end. We are now negotiating their contract. My focus is always going to be on workers. That's what I've kind of dedicated my life to. So that's going to be my approach to everything, is how it benefits the workers and what they're doing.
My name is Adam Hayes. I'm one of the co-owners of Sense, which is a small indoor cultivation company here in San Francisco. We're legacy operators, so we're here, for several years before recreational cannabis came into place. So we've been through that whole process of, of licensing and permitting everything. I'm here because I think it's important for, similar to what Carter was saying, for small business owners such as myself, to be here and have a voice and know what's going on, within the city, in cannabis. We're a small scrappy company that doesn't have any investors. We've been bootstrapped our whole way, and we're still here. There's not many companies like us, I believe, left, especially in San Francisco. So, yeah, I think it's important for us to be represented, and that's why I'm here.
Hi everyone, Ali Jamalian, lucky to be on my third term here. I represent C8, social equity operator, manufacturing. I was lucky enough to work with Mohamed and Michael and the OC over the last 2 sessions, where I think we did make some impact, even when it doesn't feel like it sometimes. So thanks for prefacing it with that, Nikesh. I'm really excited to work with all the new faces here. I think there's a lot of us now are small business owners. From applicants, we grew to small business owners. So I think we'll have a little bit of different work in addressing, now that there's data of 4 years, now that we can make some decisions going forward. It's a really good time to sort of revamp the recommendations and keep continuity with the recommendations that Nikesh mentioned. Those were definitely 3 really important subjects for the last 2 committee sessions. So it'd be great to keep that going. Glad to be part of it again. Thank you.
I think you might have stepped out of the room, but I said the non-voting members could also introduce themselves very briefly, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What department you represent?
Mohamed Mali. I'm a principal environmental health inspector with the environmental health branch under the Department of Public Health. The programs that I oversee are children's lead prevention program, healthy housing and vector control, and cannabis. So we also, in the cannabis space, we deal with consumption activities, approval of cannabis consumption. In addition, we are still the regulatory agency for the legacy dispensaries that are Article 33. So we are still overseeing those. Yeah.
I'm Dylan Rice. I'm a senior analyst at the Entertainment Commission. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see this committee and this department grow, and so fantastic. The Entertainment Commission, if you don't know, our job is to permit and regulate venues and outdoor events with entertainment. We also mediate with neighbors, between neighbors who are complaining or sometimes supporting entertainment activity, and then we also advocate for a vibrant and responsible entertainment nightlife community. And it's just a pleasure to be here. We're here to be a resource and a thought partner with these discussions as cannabis continues to be normalized and continues to intersect with nightlife entertainment spaces. And we have been permitting temporary events that have cannabis activity are at, consumption lounges. So it's already starting.
I'm Stephen Clark, Senior Building Inspector with the Department of Building Inspection. I work within the Plan Review Services Division. Looking forward to providing kind of information or feedback regarding any things that are related to building permit processing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Christensen, representing the planning department, but I work for the permit center now. So the planning department regulates the location and physical characteristics of businesses and also any entitlements that you need. So if you need to get dragged down to City Hall for a public hearing, ask whether you can open a business there. Planning is the department that manages all of those. Planning's cannabis programs are now managed by Matthew Chandler, who unfortunately is not available today. We got used to these meetings being on Wednesdays, so Tuesday was a surprise. Matthew is the new liaison to the Office of Cannabis and will be your primary point of contact. I somewhat indirectly manage Matthew and still keep some involvement in everything. I started with the OC when it was first founded with Nicole, and then went through the Martha era, and now our current team. So my new role with the permit center is more permit coordination and improving the city's permit processes overall. So I feel like there's some intersection there still, and happy to come talk if there's anything you need from the permit center as well, but also can represent my expect.
Thank you all very much. We'll now move into public comment. For members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of this table if you would like to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have two options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 2492-763-5172. Then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit your comments by chat. The chat box is still open, and I will read your comments as they come in. I have not seen any hands raised, and I have not seen any comments in the chat. With that, agenda item number 5 is closed.
I think Tuesdays we have a lot of people, so I guess, right?
We'll now move into agenda item number 6, agenda item number 7, which will be a presentation from the Office of Cannabis, which I will be conducting, so. As small as I can make that. Okay. Well, as I've already welcomed you all to the Cannabis Oversight Committee meeting, why don't we just dive right in? This presentation is going to cover a slew of topics, but I'll try to keep it relatively quick. We're going to talk about the current roster of committee members, the legislative mandate that created the Cannabis Oversight Committee to begin with, broadly the committee's responsibilities. We're going to talk a little bit about what constitutes a meeting of the Cannabis Oversight Committee, a little bit about the meeting rules of conduct, and then we're going to chat about the chair and vice chair responsibilities right before we will move into a break. And then coming back from the break, we will be holding elections for the chair and the vice chair. So it'll be good for everyone to be familiar with what the responsibility of those roles are. I will just note for anyone who's returning, I apologize, a lot of this information is probably going to be very repetitive, but we do have a lot of new faces, so I'm going to make sure that everyone's on the same page as we move forward. So the roster of members, which we just went through, I'll just leave it up on the screen momentarily so that everyone can get the names in case, especially our remote viewers, were not able to hear it as clearly earlier.
Then the police department has just assigned a liaison.
They have the liaison, that's right.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So for everyone who's here, or for everyone who's listening, the police department has a community liaison. That person is different than the person who's supposed to represent, who's supposed to be on this committee.
No, it's not.
It's not the same person, but I think you just made your first recommendation in the record. Sort of let the committee decide if they would like to have that same person represent here. I see no reason why that would be a bad thing, but historically, they've been set up.
And just to note that we are in communication with the Unified School District. The old representative is on leave currently, so they are in the process of selecting a new representative. So, and these are our current committee members for our voting seats. I will make a brief note here that we do have 2 unfilled seats. If anyone who's viewing is interested in applying to potentially sit on the committee, there are, I don't want to say restrictions, but guidelines as to who would fill these seats. For example, number 10 would be a representative of organized labor who has worked with the cannabis business labor force previously. And the 15th seat would be somebody with experience in workforce and economic development. So if any viewers are interested in applying, feel free to reach out to the Office of Cannabis at officeofcannabis@sf.gov. And we will get back to you about how to apply. So moving right along. The legislative mandate that created the Cannabis Oversight Committee is called Ordinance Number 200-18. And it essentially outlines that the Cannabis Oversight Committee was very broadly created to do these 2 things. The first is to intake and evaluate data on the growth or the status of the cannabis industry. And the second is to make recommendations to both the mayor's office and to the Board of Supervisors to facilitate a socially responsible growth of the city's cannabis industry. So this might relate to things like job creation, it might relate to things like development of economic opportunities. I believe Dylan from the Entertainment Commission mentioned, planning creative events or working with city departments in order to come up with new ways to engage in cannabis commercially. All of that type of stuff would broadly fall under this ordinance number 260-18. But moving more into the roles and responsibilities, so the types of recommendations that the board is going to be making or has the capacity to be making have to do with a couple of these different areas, right? So the first would be how the Office of Cannabis is implementing and enforcing the current city laws and regulations, the ones that directly relate to cannabis. The second would be kind of the effectiveness of all these laws and regulations. That would be something that would be aimed more towards the Board of Supervisors, right? Who would have the legislative mandate to then change those laws. And finally, the overall health and stability of the cannabis industry. So as you all are speaking with operators, you yourselves are operators, you'll have the best information about how the cannabis industry is doing, broadly speaking. You'll be able to bring that information to these meetings, and then you can kind of pass that information not just up to us, but also along to the Board of Supervisors or along to the mayor if you think that there are legislative pathways for them to be helping cannabis business operators with regard to growing the industry and making sure that these businesses are prosperous. But what actually constitutes a meeting of this committee? This will feel a little tedious, but I think it will become clear why we're going through this in a moment. So there is Administrative Code 67.3B1, which outlines what would need to happen in order to constitute a meeting of this public body, right? So the first thing is a majority of the voting members specifically. We have 9 seats that are possible to be filled with voting members. We currently have 7 of them filled. We need at least 5 members in order to show up for a meeting to happen at all, in order for there to be quorum. These members need to meet at the same time, at the same location, and then they need to meet specifically to discuss business that falls within the jurisdiction of this committee. So if 5 of you got together for dinner and you talked about things that are totally unrelated to cannabis and have nothing to do with the business of this committee, that would not be a committee meeting, right? But if 5 of you meet at the same time and location to discuss cannabis business, that will be considered a committee meeting. Please note that no actual decisions have to be made, no votes have to be taken or anything like that for a meeting to happen. Even just meeting and talking can be considered a meeting. There are some other notes about the guidelines around the meetings that we're going to be having. Now, since the COVID-19 public health emergency declaration has been lifted, all public body meetings are required to be in person. We have taken the effort to set up this hybrid setup here with our partners at TIS. thank you very much for your assistance with that as well. In order to make sure that these meetings can be hybrid, that is not so that you all can attend remotely, and so that the public can attend remotely and participate remotely. Members of the committee are required to attend in person, barring any reasonable accommodation requests. So if there is, potentially a family emergency, if there is a disability accommodation, any of those types of things, please meet with us, please reach out to us. We're happy to set something like that up.
Scott, before you continue, Scott had mentioned the definition of what constitutes a meeting. If you're sitting there and wondering, well, we meet the requirements, why are we talking about what is actually a meeting? The real reason it's important is if 5 of you did meet, for instance, and you talked about cannabis activity, that would constitute a meeting, which means that it would trigger a set of requirements about hosting that meeting. If those requirements are not met, then we could be found in violation of the Brown Act, which would result in some more serious consequences. So the reason he's telling you about a meeting is because if one happens and it's not publicly noticed, the agenda is not memorialized for the public to view 72 hours in advance, it's not broadcasted at the library, these sort of trigger requirements, then we have other issues to deal with. So that's really why I was bringing it up. You would be surprised, it's very easy for a meeting to happen. There's sort of a joke at City Hall where supervisors try not to congregate in the same elevator because there's the appearance of a possible meeting, right? So it seems tedious, but that's where it's born from. And you'll probably hear all of us harp on it a lot. I know Ali has. I probably brought it up every meeting that we had. So Ali, you're going to hear a lot again. It's just the way it is. But for everyone else, that's where that's coming from. I just want to give you a little context.
Yes, and a minor note before we move forward that if you are absent 3 times without reaching out to us and letting us know, that will result in removal from the committee. So make sure if you're not going to make a meeting that you reach out to us and let us know in advance. And my boss is always thinking ahead. So this is a couple of helpful tips about the Brown Act, as Director Patel just explained. The reason that we're talking about what constitutes a meeting is so that we don't accidentally create what's down at the bottom here that's called an in seriatim meeting, or potentially just a meeting off the books, right, that hasn't been announced. So the Brown Act broadly speaking, is the act that guarantees the public's right to participate in these kinds of meetings and to know what's going on with the public bodies. So some examples of things that are tied in with the Brown Act, or that everyone on the board should be aware of, or we should be aware of. An example would be like a public records request, right? So members of the public can make public records requests of this public body for documents that relate to COC items. So the tip here is, right, make sure that if you're typing something up that you're going to present, make sure that you keep these files organized, make sure that you can access them easily, and make sure that it's specifically contained to Cannabis Oversight Committee items. Because if these things do get requested by the public, you will have to disclose whatever information is in that document, whether you wanted it to be public or not.
And Scott, that also includes communications. So if you are communicating over your personal devices, it doesn't matter what medium you're using. If it relates to the subject matter of the committee, then it is potentially.
And that especially ties in with in seriatim meetings, which would be essentially a series of meetings that through those meetings, it would holistically be one meeting, right? So for example, if 3 of you members got together and discussed something and all came to a consensus, and then one of those people went and met with 3 other people on the committee and you all discussed something and came to a consensus, right? And a series of these meetings, that is what's called an in seriatim meeting. So we want to avoid that as well. And this could even be something as simple as like replying all to an email chain, having a very extended discussion with all the members on the email chain, that even that could be considered an in seriatim meeting. So you'll see in future communications when we are talking with you or when RDA is talking with you, they might add a little line in there that reminds you, like, please do not reply all to this message, right? So things like that, just good things to keep in mind with regard to the Brown Act to make sure that we don't apply it back with that. Some quick meeting rules of conduct. I just want to give you a very quick outline of how most of these meetings are going to go, at least especially in the beginning. So the first agenda item is always going to be like a call to order and then a roll call. I apologize, the slides are slightly wrong in the sense that we have now added a land acknowledgement to our committee hearing process. That will always be our second agenda item. Our third agenda item is always going to be the review and the consideration of the current meeting agenda. So that's where members will be in a position to add items to the agenda or to expand on a specific item that's on the agenda. And the fourth item is always going to be the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, which all the members should have reviewed before the meeting starts, so that everyone can just, give us a thumbs up on whether those minutes were accurate or chime in if they need to be amended. And then the remaining items on the agenda are going to be called one at a time. So an example of this, as we're doing right now, would be that, let's say the fourth agenda item would be a presentation from the Office of Cannabis. Now, the way that these items go, once you're within the item, within the agenda item. So the Office of Cannabis is going to present on a topic. The OOC members will be invited up, as myself in here at the podium, to come up and give a presentation. Once the presentation is complete, the committee members are free to ask questions, engage in a small amount of dialogue, a little bit of back and forth if there's things that you need clarified or information that wasn't in the presentation, those types of questions. Once the comments from the committee and the questions from the committee have been dealt with, then we're going to move to public comment. But this is just a note for some members of the committee who have sat in previous sessions. This is a slight adjustment for how we've done things in the past. We are going to move to public comment, take all of the public comment, and then move it back to open the floor to potential votes, potential more discussion, more questions, more items that might be brought up by committee members. This is just to ensure that we take the public comments into account on all the items before we actually take any action on them. And then once the floor opens back up to members, this is after public comment, you can discuss the item more, you can call for a vote. As we saw earlier in this very meeting, Ali brought a motion before the group, and then that motion needed to be seconded by a different member. So if anyone's not sat on the committee like this before, every motion that's brought before the committee needs to be seconded in order for then an action to be taken on that motion. Please also note that as you're looking at the agenda, only agenda items that are labeled with the term action or possible action can actually be voted upon. Everything else is considered just a discussion.
Really quickly, just for everyone's benefit, why is it that every item has public comment? And what is the scope of that public comment related to? And is it necessary? Required?
Yes, so the public comment is required on all agenda items. We have public comment on all agenda items in order to make sure, as we mentioned earlier, that first of all, obviously that we're not running afoul of the Brown Act, but also second of all, to ensure that the public can engage on these items. As everyone's also seen, we have a general public comment where people can talk about anything cannabis related that they like. And then we have the specific public comments. So that way, if the meeting wouldn't get very crowded, for example, people would have time to bring these public comments up on each individual item. And also to inform the discussion and the voting of the committee members. So you can hear directly from the public on their opinions on that item. If there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, just as a preview to the next slide. Right now, you're serving in the role of leading the region, but who will take on this responsibility?
Yes.
We need to know who will do it.
Good point. Yes, this is all very important because the chair is typically the one who does almost everything that I've been doing this meeting, with the exception of some of the tech stuff like opening the chat and talking about public comment. The chair will instead be calling all of these items. We'll be calling for the, well, not always calling for the votes, but may call for votes. They call for the closed items. They'll essentially be the ones that are maintaining decorum across all of this. And then the vice chair will step in any times that the chair is not present. Yeah. So once a vote is taken on an item, the chair can close the item out. Once the vote is taken, the chair can close that item out and move on to the next item on the agenda. So some brief information about the chair and vice chair. The chair and the vice chair are responsible, as we just said, for running this whole meeting. So that means maintaining the rules of order, maintaining decorum in the meeting, calling agenda items, closing votes, sometimes making motions themselves. The chair and the vice chair will also serve as a representative of the committee as a whole in front of other bodies. So for example, if a representative from this committee is called to go in front of the Board of Supervisors, that will be the chair or the vice chair in their absence. So those are pretty big responsibilities that the chair has. And we will obviously work with whoever the chair or the vice chair is to ensure that we can maintain the rules of order and decorum as we move forward. The chair and the vice chair, they also work with the partners, the city partners like the Office of Cannabis or with RDA or with any of our other city partners in order to do things like putting the agenda together for these meetings, in order to get something specifically scheduled and on the books, in order to communicate with committee members to make sure that meetings will work for people, more people need accommodations. They will also work directly with the commission to seek input about what's going to be on the agenda in the future. You'll notice that on the agenda, one of the last items every time is always going to be essentially a review and consideration of future agenda items. So that will always be a little bit baked in, but obviously the chair and the vice chair will be the point people for committee members to go to if there's specific things that they want to see on the agenda.
Scott, I'll add one other piece to this, which is the chair is also responsible for making the requests to other city departments for any presentations or information that they think is beneficial for the committee at the next meeting. It's written into the code that if that request is made, the city departments have to do their very best to meet the request. So that's another formal mechanism that the chair is typically responsible for. We'll assist. It typically comes from the chair.
Yeah, we are only experts insofar as the cannabis topics go. If it relates to another topic from another city department, it would obviously be much more beneficial for any one of our partners to discuss that. So, are there any questions on the things that we've discussed so far? Clarifications that would be helpful?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if the vice chair and chair are not, second who's leading the way?
That's a great question. I'm not 100% certain, probably me, but please.
It would likely be you. However, we may run into a quorum issue at that point as well, if two members of the 7 right now are not present, right? So if we're missing a third member, and this has happened in the past for whatever reason, not everyone's able to attend, we may postpone the meeting. The committee may decide if the chair and vice chair are present, then is it worth having a meeting and just filing? Of course. But if it was absolutely necessary to have a meeting and we only had 5 members, then Scott would faithfully step into that role and help orchestrate the meetings. And the Resource Development Associates in the Office Canvas would work with the chair and vice chair behind the scenes to set the agenda. We just be responsible to execute whatever the agenda is.
And I'm happy to take more questions. I just put this back up on the screen for our remote viewers and also for our committee members here. Obviously, it would be easier to avoid running into quorum issues if we had a full committee. So please, if you know anyone who could sit in seat 10 or seat 15, please, encourage them to apply and reach out to the Office of Cannabis for more information on how to do that. Do we have any other questions, clarifications that would be helpful? Oh, Michael.
On conducting a meeting, agenda item 2, review and consider the meeting agenda. You noted that people can move to add items to the agenda, but I thought that agenda items needed to be published 72 hours in advance.
Excellent. So can't actually add agenda items that are going to be put to a vote. It's been our practice that agenda items aren't added after the agenda is published to avoid any violation of the Brown Act, because Mike was right, it does need to be noticed 72 hours in advance. So what typically happens is if there is interest in adding an agenda item, it will be added to the next meeting. And typically what you can do to an agenda during this portion is if you want to rearrange the order. Right. So for instance, if someone has to leave or going to this forum, then you might move an item that requires action to an earlier point and then move the discussion item to later in the meeting. But
Which happens quite,
sorry,
which happens quite frequently.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Good point. Thank you, Michael. Yes, and I will note that I am relatively new at this, so please, if you see things, come and speak out, right, so that I can make sure that we adjust this in the future.
Well, one more thing I'd like to add is that you can actually put a motion on the floor before going to public comment on certain items. You want to do that to see if the public wants to put in some input on that motion, and then you can reword it. But like, sometimes you tend to put motions on the floor, go to public comment and come back, like we did today. So that is, you can also do that.
Yeah, and I'll note that the chair has some flexibility around sort of working the steps within an agenda item. So in some instances, what I'll need to try may make a lot of sense because it's more targeted and we want feedback on a specific motion. In other instances, if the committee is just looking for ideas or potential ways to proceed on a motion, it makes sense to go with the public comment first and then we can back. So it just depends on the item, but it's a good one.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, well, this was our last agenda item before our break. So we are going to take a 10-minute break, come back at 2:10 for all of our viewers.
like a 2 year.
That's, my breaks. Being, recorded, right?
Thank you all for your patience. We will now move to agenda item number 8, which is electing the chair and vice chair of the committee. I'm going to go through some instructions here first, and then there will be a little bit of a more interactive period here in a few moments. So the process entails the committee members nominating candidates for chair and vice chair. Members can self-nominate. Those individuals who receive a second to their nomination will be put on the ballot. And please note that individuals who are will be elected to a specific position. So if you would like to run for chair or vice chair specifically, but not both, please make sure that, you're putting your hat in for the right seat. So first, are there preferences on how the vote is conducted? We can do a really simple public vote, just a show of hands. I can distribute pieces of paper and people can write their vote down anonymously if they'd like, and we can just tally them up afterwards. Does anyone have a strong preference? Why don't I see a show of hands for just a show of hands vote?
Yeah.
Great, okay, that's
And
nice.
it's not the benefit of meeting in person, really.
Yeah. So that keeps it really simple. Secondly, if any members of the committee are interested in holding either the chair or vice chair position, you can self-nominate now, you can indicate as such now. You will be provided a few minutes in a moment to make a few remarks about your qualifications or why you'd like to sit in that position.
I am interested in the vice chair seat.
David,
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Ali as the chair.
Second.
seconded, yeah.
I'd also like to make a motion to nominate, Adam as the vice chair.
Adam, the vice chair.
Okay, the second,
Who's Adam?
I'll second that.
Adam Hayes, Sammy.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Shay for chair.
There will be another opportunity to second as well after comments are made. Okay, so all the individuals who have been nominated to sit in a chair position will be welcome to give some remarks. I'd say try to keep your remarks to 3 minutes, please. And I guess we can start down on this end of the line. Do you want me to? I'll start at the other end of the line because I know Ali has done this.
So either way is fine.
No, I'll go first, and I just want to say thank you, Antoinette, and I'd like to put my vote in for Ali.
Shay would like to unset.
I don't want it.
Jay, I don't have instructions for how to unset.
Biblical hours, why would he take this?
No, I believe that just leaves Ali as the only nominee for the chair position. Ali, would you like to give any remarks?
I'd just like to continue the work we started and just sort of start working with this new committee. There's a lot of new faces. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved, so I think it'll just make things go smoother and a little bit less bumpy at the beginning.
That's great. Thank you, Ali. And now we have multiple individuals who are potentially up for a vice chair. I believe we have Adam, we have Antoinette. Was there a third person? So if either of you would like to take 2 to 3 minutes to give some remarks about why you might like to sit in the vice chair position, Adam, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I would like the vice chair position, one working next to Ali, who's been the chair before, I think would be a good experience for myself, and learn a lot. I've been dedicated in this industry for 15 years now. That's all I've done since I came out of my last profession, and I just believe that I just really have a vested interest in everything that goes on here, and I would be a quality candidate.
Thank you, Adam. Antoinette, would you like to make a few remarks?
Yes. I appreciate that there is a nomination on the floor for Ali. I just so quickly forgot that you've been our veteran kind of member here. So yeah, that's really great. I totally support that. And I guess for me, as wanting to be vice chair, I take it all the way back to, just when the compassionate caregiver program, there's legislature in being part of that. And then to just sit by, next to someone who actually has been here, who has a bit of the expertise. I'd like to grow from, I think I'll give support to. And, so, yeah. I'm a great note taker and I like standing in for people and, you know, it's just I think it's gonna be for me, it would be a fun role to kind of play as vice chair, because then you get a chance to get a bit of both, you know, the male, females,
The yin and the yang.
that balance. I like the balance there. Thank you.
We are now going to move into public comment. For members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of the table to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please know that you have two options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 24927635172. Then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit your comments by chat. The chat box is currently open, and I will read your comments in the record as they come in. You have an individual here to give public comment in person.
Thank you, Brian Goodwin. I just want to mention, I know Ali pretty well, and I attended virtually and I guess in person most of the committee meetings, and I found him to be fair, and I think his institutional knowledge is important, because I really would like to see the committee take a prominent position in San Francisco to put forward some of these reforms that we really need. On the vice chair, I know Adam a little bit. I don't know the internet, but from what I've heard today, I think either one would be good choices. So again, I appreciate your service, because I know it's not easy taking away from your work. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I am attempting to leave the chat open slightly longer to make sure that we don't have any comments that are coming in. I do not see any hands raised in the attendees, and I do not see any comments in the chat. So with that, public comment is closed. In order for a nomination to be complete, candidates must be seconded by another board member. Currently, Antoinette's candidacy is not seconded. Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Apollo. We will now hold a full vote for ballot on the chair and vice chair. When asked, please provide one vote for each position. However, this vote needs to be brought as a motion by one of the committee members. If anyone would like to introduce that motion.
Motion to vote for chair and vice chair.
Second.
Thank you, Shay. I will now host the vote. Let's take it away, Sarah. Oh, actually, yeah, sorry, chair, I guess, I don't know the exact rules of decorum are here, but I guess chair, do we need to?
Now, we say, let's put the chair to a vote and see who's
Member Chair Jamalian put forward a motion to move forward the vote for the chair position. So seat 8, Ali Jamalian, how do you vote for?
For myself.
For yourself to be chair? Seat 9, Adam Hayes, how do you vote?
I vote for Ali.
And just to restate, the motion right now is to vote for Ali as chair. So anyone who says aye is voting for that. Seat 11, Apollo Wallace, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 12, Jakari Donaldson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 13, David Nagalis-Talley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 14, Shay Gilmore, how do you vote?
Aye.
And seat 16, Antoinette Oakley, how do you vote? The motion passes with 7 ayes.
Sarah, and I believe we can just move right to the vote for the vice chair. I don't think we need a second motion.
So let's vote for the 8th.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it.
All right. Seat 8, Ali Jamalian, how do you
Adam
vote?
Hayes.
Seat 9, Adam Hayes, how do you vote?
Adam Hayes.
Seat 11, Paula Wallace, how do you vote?
Antoinette.
Seat 12, Jakari Tomlinson, how do you vote?
Adam Hayes.
Seat 13, David Nagales Polly, how do you vote?
Adam Hayes.
Seat 14, Shay Gilmore, how do you vote?
Antoinette.
And seat 16, Antoinette Mobley, how do you vote? The vote is 4 for Adam Hayes and 3 for Antoinette Mobley.
Adam Hayes is our vice chair. Congratulations to the new chair and vice chair. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 9. I'm going to stay over in the seat for now. This should be pretty quick. Reviewing the current Cannabis Oversight Committee bylaws. All of the members should have received and reviewed the bylaws in advance. So I will open the floor to any members who would like to discuss, add to, or amend portions of the bylaws. Please note that this will simply be a discussion. Any amendments that are introduced will be put to a vote at the next meeting. The floor is yours.
Miguel, is there a way to include legacy operators at this point in our mission? I know it wasn't a priority when we started, but I feel like the cross-section between legacy and social equity is getting ever larger, especially given how many businesses are not around anymore. So, and we do all have a lot of common interests. Is there a way to just maybe add that to the mission? I think
You mean in terms of adding a seat?
just the language, no, to advance racial equity within the cannabis industry, adult services for individual communities of color who've been most impacted by the war on drugs. The legacy guys have also been very impacted by the war on drugs. I'm just wondering if there's a way to include legacy operators,
Oh, this is within the mission?
just within the mission, yeah.
Okay, so the mission itself can be amended by this board. And so the way that it would proceed is someone would make a motion for the exact language and someone would second it. And if that was the case, then we would take it under submission, incorporate it into this, post it for the public to review, and then it would be put to a formal vote at the next meeting. So that is possible.
So I'm supportive of Chair Jamilian's idea and happy to work with anyone on any revisions to the language and the mission of the bylaws. I did have a question for the office. Are there any points in the bylaws that you have found that you would love for the oversight committee to maybe take a whack at, and if that's something that, you want to think about, obviously, wouldn't give you time to do that, but I thought it might be a good opportunity to help the office, construct an oversight committee, process that's, most supportive it can be.
We certainly appreciate that question. You'll note that the majority of the bylaws are taken from the code section itself. So there isn't as much room to negotiate or to move to amend. But there are certain sections, and I think mission 1.4 is definitely one of those, and we'll have this committee sort of expanded. So that one seems right for potential change in the committee. So I'm looking through some of the other sections. Nothing jumps out immediately. Maybe one thing that I might say with respect to it's 3.1 regular meetings. This is just a personal thought. What we've noticed is that the more continuity, constancy there is with meeting schedules, the more likely people are to come. So historically, this body has met at a set day of the week, during a set time of the month, at a set time. I think that is a departure from today's meeting. So to preserve that momentum and sort of keep it as muscle memory for people who are in the habit of attending these meetings, sticking to that schedule as much as possible would certainly be helpful. So not so much in the bylaws, but I thought I would just point that out, given it is part of this. And the regular meeting is going to be contemplated. So
Do any other members have anything specific that they're interested in introducing or amending the bylaws?
But I do, have part of the duties of the racial equity meeting. Can you just kind of explain, I know what it says what their efforts are, but I'm not quite sure who the racial equity meeting or where they are located, within which agency.
yeah, I'm happy.
Thank you.
No, great question, happy to speak to it. So at this point in time, this committee has not selected a racial equity lead. That would be the subject of a future meeting. It would be someone on this committee that would be nominated and then ultimately voted in as the racial equity lead. Now, we'll speak more about what the roles and responsibilities of that person is related to, but just to press it a little bit, it's not a racial equity lead in the context of the cannabis space, although that still matters. It's the racial equity lead with respect to other communities that meet throughout the city and county of San Francisco. So it's to ensure that the work of this committee is equitable, has racial representation, and that person would be a representative to some of the work that's happening at the larger city level with other committees as well. So I think the vision when this was being crafted was that there would be an opportunity for committee members across different committees to meet and to share best practices about how they are inclusive, how there are equitable considerations being taken into account and consideration. And that's what this person would do for this committee. They would essentially be that representative. I can get into it a little bit more, but I just sort of wanted to get ahead of it because I can see that the title itself might be a little bit misleading. Everything this committee does has the lens of racial equity. So that's sort of built into your work. But this particular person would be bringing a lot of the work that's being done here, best practices to a larger context. I hope that's all.
Yes.
So certainly selecting a racial equity lead can be an item that we can put on the future agenda. And I'll just note here too that, amending the bylaws is something that we can introduce on a future agenda as well. Something comes
Yeah,
up.
we don't need to adopt it today.
Yeah,
We
it
just
doesn't have
definitely
to happen.
table that to the next meeting.
Is there anything else the members would like to bring up? Okay, we will now move to public comment. For any members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of this table to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have two options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 2492-763-5172, then press *3 when prompted to do so. You will be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit your comments by chat. The chat box remains open. I will read your comments as they come in. Excuse me. Sorry, we have a little bit of a technical issue here. There may be some comments that have been submitted to our system here. My apologies. Yes, I do have a public comment. This woman is Shona Gochinar, CEO of Axis of Love SF, former task force member. Our organization has a petition with over 150 signatures in opposition to the de facto ban of new medical and equity permits with concerns of violations of antitrust laws. We ask the petition to add to public record of the committee and help forward the petition to the full board and the city attorney's office. We also have concerns that cannabis taxes are not getting to SF impacted neighborhoods and that only a handful of clubs have compassion programs. We are still present and will stand up for patients and consumers' rights and work with this committee. Thank you for reading my comments. My apologies that is a little out of order here.
Might be able to, is if these comments are not aligned with this particular item, then we can always hold them and then make sure that they're ready for the next meeting, we can give a public comment in the event that we miss.
Yes, yeah, I believe that is the only public comment that we missed, and that was submitted. So thank you all for your understanding. And I am not seeing any other hands raised or any other new comments in the chat. So with that, agenda item number 9 is closed. We will move on to agenda item number 10.
Actually, Scott, really quickly before you close, I was actually looking over the bylaws, and the bylaws spell out the provisions for making amendments. So I know that earlier there was conversation about amending the mission statement. The process here is that if the committee wants to amend the mission statement, then they can vote on that today. It'll be incorporated into the next draft of this posted for 10 days for public viewing. And then at the next meeting, you will vote to either adopt it or to amend it again, and we'll flow with the same process. So I'll say that if there's a concrete amendment, you can actually propose it right now. You can make the amendment into bylaws. We'll reflect it after we post it. We'll post for 10 days, and then you can vote to adopt it at the next meeting. So if that's something that the committee wants to do right now, we certainly can, and then it'll just expedite the adoption of the bylaws at the next meeting. Otherwise, we'll have to wait again.
That's fine.
Yeah.
They've worked for 5 years.
I was just gonna suggest, I mean, to incorporate Chair Jamalian's idea, you could just, after communities of color, insert comma, legacy operators, comma, who have been the most impacted by the war on drug use.
Thank you, Shay.
So, Scott?
Yes, so to advance racial equity within the cannabis industry by ensuring that relevant services and legal processes are inclusive, equitable, culturally competent, and effective in removing barriers for individuals and communities of colors, community of color, would we say, and legacy operators?
Yes.
Yeah.
And legacy operators.
I would, a suggestion here is for individuals, comma, communities of color, comma.
Yes.
And legacy operators.
Yes.
Who have given most impact on.
I like that.
Okay,
And that's just a suggestion, it would need to be, it would need to be motion.
so would anyone like to raise a motion for that exact language?
I'll move it up.
Second.
Perfect. So I believe as Director Patel just outlined, the process here will be that we will incorporate this language into the bylaws. They will be posted for public comment.
Yeah, a little bit tricky here, we will vote on the amendments as it's
Yes,
been
sir.
proposed. If the vote passes, then we'll post it for 10 days, and then we'll vote to adopt at the next meeting.
Yes.
So it's a motion to amend, right?
That's right.
Yes.
And motion to amend.
Second.
All right, we'll now put this motion to a vote. Seat 8, Chair Jamalian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 9, Adam Hayes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 11, Apollo Wallace, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 12, Jafari Donaldson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 13, David Nogales Talley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 14, Shay Gilmore, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 16, Antoinette Mobley, how do you vote? With, the motion passes with 7 ayes and 0 nays.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And with that, agenda item number 9 is closed. We will now move into agenda item number 10, selecting a standing meeting and proposing future agenda items. I think we should start by discussing future meeting dates. As Director Patel outlined, historically, the COC has met at a regular interval every 6 to 8 weeks. The meetings have typically been held on a weekday. I believe Wednesdays was our most recent weekday iteration, and almost always held between 1 and 4 p.m. And so for the purposes of kind of getting the ball rolling on this discussion, I will note that Monday through Wednesday are definitely the easier days for the Office of Cannabis to facilitate meetings like this in this space, and for our staff. But I should also note that this was aimed at being a discussion, and that we can kind of hear all this input, take this stuff into account, and then work with the chair and vice chair to schedule the standing meeting as we move forward. So,
Does anybody have a day they can absolutely never make?
Mondays.
Okay, well, then
These are out.
Mondays will take off off the first, all right.
I mean, I like Tuesdays. But
Well, how about the city department representatives here? Because that's all, Tuesdays might be a little much for you guys, right?
you know, as much as I do love being here, Matthew Chandler on Wednesdays is the time that we have with the zoning administrator. And so if there is a case that we need clarification with the zoning administrator, we're kind of making them choose between being able to get that clarification and advance the case forward or come here. Planning would definitely be, scheduling would be a lot easier on Wednesdays.
Planning is a big driver and getting an appointment with a zoning administrator is not easy. So I don't know, it would probably benefit us as well, right? To have, not have Matthew here while he has an appointment with a zoning administrator.
Yeah, I mean, we can make it work if need be, if it needs to be on Tuesdays, but that scheduling to get that answer would happen a lot faster.
You guys have a preference between Tuesdays and Wednesdays?
I think the preference would be for Wednesday, only in so much as that's been the historical practice, and I think people are accustomed to it. So, not to say people couldn't get used to Tuesday, but I think we might just have lower viewership for a while until people catch on or new days Tuesday. If it's not that much of an inconvenience, Wednesday we need to be able to work. We're open.
Well, the OC does a good job with the bulletin, and I believe like almost everybody in the industry really reads those bulletins. Yeah, a pretty strong viewership on that one. I don't know, I mean, I feel like planning is kind of a key component to these meetings. But anyway.
Wednesdays work for me.
Wednesdays is fine too.
Yeah.
Across the board, Wednesdays are looking at.
No, Wednesday is what we're at.
Okay, it's better for you as well.
Yeah.
All right, then perfect.
Okay.
Stick to Wednesday.
We appreciate your thought.
Any,
I need you guys to be, usually have the questions if we're planning.
is there any general consensus or preference on every month, every 6 weeks, every 2 months? I think about a month and a half, 2 months is where we're
Yeah, I
at.
think the
last.
cadence was good and just used up all of our budget, didn't it?
No, we still have some budget left, but that's accounting for the rest of the year. So
Right.
typically what we've done is it's been about every 6 weeks. If it's something that's more urgent, then we'll schedule something closer in time. So towards the end of last year, we had 2 meetings within 4 weeks of each other. Typically, it was about 6 to 8 weeks. That generally has been a sweet spot because it provides us with enough time to get people before the meeting. So if we need someone from our city department, it gives enough time to make the request, work with the schedules. So 6 weeks has been around the sweet spot, but we can always adjust if there are more timely items.
I will note we are required to have 5 meetings, so we probably don't want to go above 2 months or so between meetings. 6 weeks kind of work for people. Okay. So we will work with the chair and the vice chair to schedule out a Wednesday meeting sometime in the 6-week timeframe. Any other comments or items that you'd like to raise with regard to the schedule? This is also a time when we can bring up potential future agenda items. So if there's anything that people would like to flag now for us to put on the agenda for the next meeting, that's something else that we can discuss with the chair and the vice chair about adding.
And Scott, before we move to that, maybe just noting that we have the public comment and we can,
Yes.
given how concrete the suggestion was around the standing meeting, we could put it to a vote as well after public comment.
That's true as well. Should we take public comment on just the scheduling, then go back to a vote, then take discussion of potential future agenda items and then public comment on that?
Yeah, I think the best way to proceed is open up the public comment for both the standing meeting as well as future agenda items. Then we'll let the committee discuss the future agenda items
Sounds good.
and then vote on
And then vote on that
the time.
date. Okay. We will now move into public comment. For members of the public attending in person, please line up in front of this table if you'd like to provide public comment. For our remote viewers, please note that you have 2 options to provide public comment at this time. The first option is to call in by phone. If you would like to use this option, please dial 1-415-655-0001, followed by this access code 2492-763-5172. Then press *3 when prompted to do so. You may be muted if there are others in the queue before you. If so, please wait until your line is unmuted to begin your public comment. Option 2, you can submit comments by chat. The chat box remains open and I will read your comments as they come in. And I believe we have an individual who would like to provide public comment in person.
Brad Goodwin. I'd like to see a an item about medical cannabis patients. Antoinette brought up the compassion programs, which we support, and Ronnie Mary has one itself. And not every retailer is a participant in that. And we'd like to see every retailer, it's not a legal thing, but as an ethical thing, as part of our community, that they be part of that. So I'd love to see an agenda item for that. As I pointed out, I'd like to see an agenda item about the MMIC program, how we can work with public health to expand it, how we can set up educational outreach to people so that they're aware of it, and how can we get the cost down? Right now, it's $100 with exceptions. We'd like to see go to zero for people who need. And it was one of the recommendations previously. So, general agenda items related to medical. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
So you put me on.
remember them saying,
Yeah, you put me up with it.
yeah,
It was,
I think Sarah had brought this up.
yeah, it was very twisted, you're right.
Put the office of vital.
Okay, I see no comments in the chat, and I see no hands raised in the attendees. With that, public comment is closed. Now we will move into a discussion about potential future agenda items, as well as if anyone would like to make a motion to vote on scheduling the next meeting.
The scheduling board would look like, we will keep the current cadence Wednesdays, every
About
5 to
every
6
6
weeks.
weeks, some
This one
Wednesdays.
is 4, so we would just keep as is.
And we can keep this
So-
location the same, and this works for everyone, and, yeah.
So that just be a motion to keep everything, keep as is. What we've been doing,
Say,
or because it's a new session, we need to redefine it as well.
and if you propose exactly like 6 weeks, we can send out the calendar invitation, y'all would have it, and then we can coordinate the speaker.
Well, we still do the polls to actually determine the action. Yes, I would definitely make a motion to have our meetings every 6 weeks on Wednesdays between 1 and 4, unless we don't have quorum, obvious.
Second.
Chair Devalian puts forward a motion to have meetings every 6 weeks on Wednesdays, 1 to 4 p.m. unless a quorum is not established. We'll now put that to a vote. Seat 8, Chair Devalian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 9, Adam Hayes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 11, Apollo Wallace, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 12, Jakari Donaldson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 13, David Nagales Sally, how do you vote? Seat 14, Shay Gilmore, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 16, Antoinette Mobley, how do you vote? Aye. With 7 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you, Sarah. And unless there is any further discussion of potential agenda items, no.
Yeah, and I think what Scott's saying is the committee can certainly talk about any potential future agenda items that they'd like to see for the next meeting. We can do that right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no other agenda items, so we can just adjourn.
Yeah, it's not an action item, so we wouldn't be voting. If there's anything you want on the agenda, you can just say it.
Just voice it, yeah, and we'll take a note of it.
That we'll go on to records. Review it. Other than that, I'd say that's adjourn the meeting.
I'd just like to note that we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule.
Tight ship.
On record.
Tell me about it.
Sorry. No, please, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. Is the agenda for the next meeting, is that going to include the pickup from the Sarah Payan efforts, or is that something we want? I'm a big fan of Sarah's, and so I'm gonna, make space for continuing her good work if we
Do you
can.
want to flag, raising the?
Yeah, as long as it's in the notes when we do the agenda, we'll definitely take it into consideration, try to put it on.
Awesome.
Okay.
Public.
Okay, so,
And I work with Sarah on the state committee, so her cause is still also very dear to me.
voice is alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have a note from Shay to bring up Sarah's notes from the final session, the final meeting of the previous session of the Cannabis Oversight Committee.
I think we should appoint our racial equity next, session as well. That's something we can do.
Any other items?
I had a question. I know to open up a cannabis business, you need to have a labor peace agreement. A lot of companies ran out to Protec, a fake union, and got their LPAs through them. I would like to, is there a way that we could see who has labor peace agreements, which should be everyone, and who they have the LPAs with? Is that something that we are allowed to do?
So I'll check with the city attorney, she's typically here, but we'll certainly get back to you. But what I can say is that we were aware of this potential issue even before the ruling came down. And so this has been on our radar for years.
I've been chasing it.
Specifically the company that you mentioned.
Yes.
So, we are aware of it, and I think it's just a matter of looking at whether or not we can disclose those records, but I think it needs to be a matter of notifying the businesses that there's been a request for these records, and then we might be able to disclose them. But one way or another, we can certainly discuss it, and I just want to assure you, it's already on our radar.
Okay.
It has been for years.
Good.
Okay, with that, agenda item number 10 is closed. We'll bring all those items into consideration in the next agenda. And we'll move on to agenda item number 11, which is the adjournment of the meeting. So that concludes today's meeting of the Cannabis Oversight Committee. Thank you all who attended in person and remotely. And congratulations to all of our new members.
Thank you.
That's a motion to adjourn.
Actually,
Union meetings, you have to.
Yes,
A motion to adjourn. Hey.